Not much Connor continuing for part 2. Part 1 is linked in the description. You might want to watch that if you're going to watch this for some foreknowledge of what I'm going through. Therefore, after this discussion, the following should be understood when examining history and current events. The knowledge, power, and ownership of the kuffar are weak and limited. They do not see all, hear all, know all, control all, and own all, as some individuals try to portray them. Whoever believes that has fallen into shirk. And now, by most accounts of the spying power of the United States, they kind of should, you know. They should be able to find these guys, be able to easily bomb them, right? But yet they're unable to do that. Point 2. The only ancient conspiracy mentioned in the Quran is that of the accursed Iblis, Allah, Ta'ala, said about his plot. Indeed, the plot of the shaitan has ever been weak. Accordingly, the plots of shaitan's allies are even weaker. Rather, they are objects of Allah's plot against them. Shaitan, I imagine, is Satan, the adversary. That is what Satan literally means. And, yeah, there is, you could call it a conspiracy by the adversary. But, well, radical Islam is actually a part of that. The kuffar are divided, hold animosity and enmity towards each other, carry out violence against each other, humiliate and degrade each other, yet they unite against the Muslims, their common enemy. Oh, you have believed, do not take the Jews and the Christians as allies. They are in fact allies of one another. That was a Quran verse that just directly contradicted what was above here. It was on page 17. I went over it in part 1. The Jews say the Christians have nothing true to stand on, and the Christians say the Jews have nothing to stand on. Oops, the propaganda screwed up. But the kuffar's unity is fragile and superficial. They often divide after unity and betray each other. Okay, well, maybe not a complete contradiction. But Zionist Judaism and very much of right-wing Christianity and a bit of left-wing Christianity, too, do have their alliances for certain. But anyway, the kuffar undoubtedly do plot out conspiracies, but these plots are weak due to the fragile relationships the kuffar have with each other, the unreliability and cowardice of their hypocritical allies and agents, the kuffar's fear of the Muslims more than their own fear of Allah, and the kuffar's fear of death and love of the dunya. I'm not totally sure what dunya means, but nonetheless, well, what actually is the case with this? I hate to cite InfoWars, but they didn't actually write this. Dr. Nafiz Hamed did. And this is actually a pretty good article. I've went through most of the links, and there's quite a lot of information in this. And sourcing Rand Corporation documents. Judicial Watch actually did obtain documents that are partly redacted and appear like they may be actually legit. And in the article, this is the one part that actually kind of pisses me off, because this guy hasn't done his research on it. Cutting people's heads, not just that, as we reported last week, now that ISIS is running around the Middle East, cutting people's heads off in 1080p quality and Hollywood quality, perhaps literally video. No, that's not perhaps. It is completely fake. Yet there are real execution videos from the Middle East, and some seem to have the ISIS flag there, but that's another story. But the point of showing that is that, yes, okay, they have fragile relationships with each other. Well, they have quite a lot of solidarity in reporting this fake propaganda about ISIS and not breaking open. The mainstream media does not break open stuff like what's in this article. Period. 5. Their real conspiracies always have material evidence and are not based on unsupported deductions, guessing at the unseen. Okay. It goes on, and they have thereof no knowledge. They follow not except assumption, and indeed assumption avails not against the truth at all. Scriptures right there. Quran. A common enemy and mutual interest does not necessitate that the Mujahideen are agents of one of the two kafir camps, especially when the Mujahideen fight both camps and are fought by both camps. But yet they are. See, this is the whole purpose of George Orwell writing about the character Goldstein, because what he learned when he was in British intelligence was that they would create their own freaking enemy for the sake of national unity and all. Okay. The Mujahideen, and this is Goldstein right here. Okay, ISIS is Goldstein. Bin Laden was Goldstein before that. The Mujahideen against the communist Russians were not agents of the Crusader Americans, just as the Muslims' war against the Persian Empire did not necessitate that the Muslims were agents of the Romans. Also, when one reflects on modern history, the different apostates waging nationalist wars always had open relationships with their Kafir allies. So the Mujahideen against the communist Russians were not agents of the Crusader Americans. Why don't you ask Zabiginu Brzezinski about that, who trained them in 1979 and has admitted this openly, okay, before it originally was reported, which was 1980. He admitted that it was 1979 that they started training them to give the Russians their own Vietnam. Oh, the Muslims' war against the Persian Empire, yeah, they were actually likely agents of the Romans, fighting a proxy war for them. Look into the origins of Muhammad and his, what was his, Catholic wife? Anyway, and that's how he was funded, too. Anyway, also, when one reflects on modern history, the different apostates waging nationalist wars always had open relationships with their Kafir allies. I already went over that. The real conspiracies were not secrets hidden from mankind. Okay, not everything is completely in the open. I mean, what about World War II and Wall Street and Germany and how Wall Street funded Hitler's Germany while also funding America? Okay, they're funding both sides of that war, but that wasn't public knowledge, and it barely is at all still today. You know, Professor Anthony Sutton exposed that and got fired from the Hoover Institute quite a while ago, specifically because he wanted to publish that information. Iraqi Satwar, Bush, blah blah blah. Okay, yeah, sometimes they do openly meet. I mean, al-Awlaki, years ago, it was right after 9/11 or whatever, a few years after 9/11, met at the Pentagon, wasn't it? Grand conspiracies consist of so many factors only controllable by Allah. Well, if that's the case, then your statement about Shaitan's allies, or Shaitan's conspiracy, the one of the accursed Iblis, that means that can't exist. An example of such a grand conspiracy theory is that of September 11th being carried out by the Americans themselves. How many members of the Crusader government would have to be under permanent watch to prevent news of the operation getting out before its execution? Well, not that many if you understand the power of ideology. Because the power of ideology, well, I guarantee you many of them are either motivated by money or by, it's in the national interest that we do this, because we gotta get into the Middle East and, we gotta take control over it and stuff and get control of the resources for the sake of America, right? So how many involved mouths would have to be silenced all over the world to keep such a conspiracy from not being exposed after the fact? Well, there are a number of whistleblowers, though I would not say she's perfect. Sybil Edmonds, what's his face? Steve Pachenik, even though they both kind of diverge you from the actual truth, but that's a matter of debate, and what's important about 9/11 is the actual motivation for it, which big thing was, the passing of the Patriot Act and gaining control of the resources in the Middle East and the nations as well. So does America have control over so many factors? The attack was against America itself, and according to the conspiracy theorists, it was executed by the Americans. How many American officials would have felt themselves to be committing treason by knowing of the conspiracy and remaining silent? The reality can only be the obvious one, the definite truth, and that is that the Mujahideen, under the leadership of Shaka Usama, carried out the blessed attack and thereby humiliated America in a manner it never experienced before. Well, we can count out that this person writing this has no knowledge whatsoever of the many, many levels of classification in the many U.S. government agencies. But we know they're a liar because this whole publication is a lie, and we're going to get to that in my following videos with John Can't Lie, who lies a lot. And point 7, they say, is that the purpose of conspiracy theories is to exaggerate the power of the kafir, and thereby the Muslims become paralyzed by analysis of current events and eventually fear the kafir more than they fear Allah. It is a method to ruin a Muslim's tawakkul, reliance upon his Lord. Over time, he will find himself being encompassed by the following verses. Give tidings to the hypocrites that there is for them a painful punishment, those who take disbelievers as allies instead of the believers. Do they seek with them might? But indeed, might belongs to Allah entirely. Yeah. The purpose of conspiracy theories is to exaggerate the power of the kafir. Bullshit. Complete bullshit. See, those who are generally referred to as conspiracy theorists, the reason why they speak about this is because they, for the most part, it seems that they actually say that it's a conspiracy of Satan, in essence. And in actuality, it's to undermine the powers of what these people call the kafir. Anyway, in light of this, one should realize the differences between the various rival parties of the kafir forming real alliances, like the Crusader Safawi Nasser coalition, to wage war against the Islamic State and thereby achieve their mutual kafir interests, and between believing that the Christians, Rafada, and I don't know what that means, Jews, and apostates are all covert members of the same secret society, underground political party, or grandiose conspiracy theory, all of them adoring each other and faking their hostilities. No. There's a thing called compartmentalization, you know. Not everybody knows the whole fucking picture. They get told a bullshit story of why they're doing their job, and one that they will believe in, or they just get paid to do it and don't ask questions. And that's how they actually pull it off. May Allah expose the real conspiracies of the kafir and erase the shirky conspiracy theories from the hearts. And of course, the point of this is that they are actually using this false created opposition to give weight to the idea that they, Al-Qaeda, Islamists, radical Islamics actually pulled that shit off when there's no fucking way the buildings would have fallen, yada, yada, yada. If you don't know enough about that subject, well, I suggest you look into it. And one I highly recommend is especially September Clues. After seeing that one, I slapped myself in the face for not realizing it for over 10 years. These fake Western propagandists want you to believe that these guys are actually some sort of threat. And if they are a threat at all, they're not a threat to America, they are a threat in the Middle East then. They're being given this equipment, okay? They're not taking it. Airdrops they've been given the equipment. Oh, it was a mistake, says the United States military. Bullshit. No friggin' mistake at all. If they're funded by the United States and the United States military and trained by them, and then they stole a bunch of weapons after conquests in Iraq and Syria and shit. No, they're giving them to them. Why would they train them and then say, oh yeah, they just turned and stole all our weapons and stuff and our Toyotas and blah blah blah. And following this video will be my analysis of this article by John Can't Lie, starting on page 74. And this is the one that purports that ISIS is going to have nukes or ammonium nitrate bombs. More fear porn, and honestly, there's a possibility that nukes don't even exist. I don't know if you ever looked at the footage of it, but any footage I've ever seen of nukes is bullshit. Maybe if I find some that's real, I'll say otherwise. But the more I look into it, there's a long history of video being fabricated for a lot of events for years. Don't assume I'm right or wrong, especially that I'm wrong just because you don't want to believe that. I don't think that would be a good choice because there's many layers of deception in this world. Anyway, until then, have a nice day. And don't fear this bull crap.